My paper is entitled, Can You Teach an Old Werewolf New Tricks? Ask a stranger on the street to name a famous werewolf, and the answers will be somewhat predictable. Preteens and teenagers between the ages of 12 and 15 will probably answer with Jacob Black of Twilight fame. Older teenagers and those into his or her mid-20s might mention Scott McCall of Teen Wolf. A popular answer among all age groups would be Remus Lupin of the Harry Potter series. Even David Naughton's character, David Kessler, from An American Werewolf in London, may crop up as an answer from those raised in the 1980s. Werewolves have been immortalized in myths, fairy tales, and literature for centuries, but it has only been recently that they've acquired a decent reputation among popular culture. The switch from monster to man's best friend may have come from analyzing the inner beast in everyone. Sometimes even werewolves deserve the benefit of the doubt. From their inception, werewolves have been meant to incite fear. Mindless, savage beasts tearing through the night are certainly frightening, but one theory suggests that werewolves ended up being a physical representation of the idea of othering. In Victorian England, it was thought that the werewolf disease, lycanthropy, was more prominent in lower-class citizens than in the middle or upper class. Henry Mayhew, an early English sociologist and writer, stated that the underclass had a greater development of the animal than of the intellectual or moral nature. The word animal here could refer to the physical transformation of a human into a hybrid wolf creature, or Mayhew could be stigmatizing the lower class as being more prone to succumb to base desires. The effect is the same, however. The lower class is othered, even discriminated against, by the upper class, and the social divide widens. Edward Said describes this idea of othering from the perspective of the East being overtaken, and in some ways created by, Western cultures. Everything they knew, more or less, about the Orient came from books written in the tradition of Orientalism, placed in its library of Idées Reçues. From them, the Orient, like a fierce lion, was something to be encountered and dealt with to a certain extent, because the text made that Orient possible. Said is saying that the Orient only developed as it did because Western cultures had already written about it. Had the East been able to develop freely without the influence of the West's preconceived thoughts, it might have formed a different culture. Instead, it became what it thought it was supposed to be based on other cultures' perceptions. Its social identity became its self-identity. This same correlation can be made between the class structure and werewolves. As the lower class became associated with werewolves and the negative attributes that they held, members of this class unconsciously portrayed more and more of these same characteristics, which perpetuated the idea that the lower class was comprised of bestial, inhuman beings. Until recently, the wolf was abhorred by society with few exceptions. During the Spanish Inquisition, those accused of being a werewolf were burned at the stake along with witches. So deep was people's fear that werewolves were referred to as the incarnation of the devil, and not believing so was considered heresy. Written in the 12th century, Marie de France's poem Bisclavret appears to be another confirmation of the heinous nature of werewolves. In the opening stanza, de France describes the werewolf as her society knew it. A werewolf is a savage beast, wild furies on it at least. Eats men, wreaks evil, does no good, living and roaming deep in the wood. This archetype that werewolves adhered to from the beginning of time. Monstrous, bloodthirsty, and carnal, preying on good people with no good to offer society and only harm to be done. This is not without reason. During the medieval times, wolves were a serious threat to farmers. They killed livestock and threatened farmers' families in Europe's rural countryside. Over the years, it's easy to see how this literal beast evolved into a story told around campfires at night. An actual animal, one that was violent, cunning, and thieving in the night, came to symbolize human beings with those same unsavory characteristics. Werewolves became a kind of morality tale, and some argue that they represent a kind of self-hate in humans for man's own savagery and lust. Such a hypothesis makes sense, because for as long as humanity has existed, there has been storytelling. And for a majority of that time, each story was told in order to impress a moral upon its listeners. It would not be illogical to say that humans unconsciously took what he or she saw to be wrong with society and projected those traits into stories as a way to discourage future generations from behaving similarly. Can this age-old stereotype be broken? Can werewolves become as beloved as they were once feared? Certain authors have been taking steps toward this. De France surprises her readers with the character of Bisclavret, a werewolf who acts more human than some of the humans in the poem. Even as a werewolf, he behaves as nobly and honorably as if he was still a human in the court, and everyone notices, even if they do not know his true identity. Of Bisclervay, the palace staff say, "For it's so gentle, well-bred, polite, it would never do what isn't right." De France's message is more than give werewolves the benefit of the doubt. She is using a fictional ailment, lycanthropy, to personify the secret, sometimes dirty or inappropriate lives and innate desires lived and experienced by all human beings. Everyone has done something shameful in his or her life, and it is this shame that prevents a person from becoming a completely mindless monster and allows him or her to continue the pursuit of goodness. J.K. Rowling does much the same thing that De France does with Bisclervay with her character Remus Lupin. She has stated that Lupin's disease is meant to symbolize AIDS. Lupin and Bisclervay are both rejected and feared by their societies, just as many AIDS patients are today, and the uncertain nature of both lycanthropy and AIDS lends itself to an easy comparison. The underlying message in all three situations is the same. A person should not be judged by their afflictions. Every person is a Bisclervay or a Lupin, a decent human being constantly fighting the tumultuous battle of right and wrong and putting on the facade of clothes and makeup and socially acceptable behavior to cover up the animal inside of him or her. The concept of a half-man, half-wolf creature has existed for centuries, from ancient Greek and Roman myths to current pop culture. Years ago, they were hated and feared. Today, they are idolized. What was once a symbol of the lower class is now considered cool. Is this change indicative that society is now willing to accept and embrace the inner beast in each person? Or is it merely the product of attractive actors playing roles? Humanity has always been aware of the dark side of itself, and it has always been trying to squelch it. In a dog-eat-dog world, there's a little bit of wolf in everyone, and life is no dog show. One should not be quick to judge another's inner beast, lest he or she discover that the animal is not the true monster. Thank you.